Jules was not just a maid. In the Hedson household, she was the silent pillar that held up more than just the weight of domestic chores. She had been with them for nearly a decade, through tantrums, birthdays, grief, and laughter. To the children, she was a second mother. To the staff, a quiet leader. And to Mr. Hedson himself, a trusted hand who never overstepped. But that afternoon changed everything. The sun spilled through the grand windows of the Hedson estate, casting golden lines across the polished floors. Jules moved quietly through the east hallway, her soft-soled shoes barely making a sound. A basket of freshly laundered towels rested on her hip, her thoughts occupied by a mental checklist: prepare the guest room, check on little Evie's fever, call her own son to remind him about his homework. Then she heard it. Two voices. One familiar, clipped with frustration. The other, young and anxious, Fred. Mr. Hedson's only son. Jules slowed her steps. She wasn't one to eavesdrop. But something in Fred's tone stopped her cold. "They're going to kill me if I don't pay up, Sam." "I'm serious this time," Fred hissed. His voice was low but laced with panic. "How much do you owe?" came Sam's voice, his best friend since boarding school. 30 grand. Maybe more. I lost track after the second round last week." Jules felt her chest tighten. 30,000? "Why not just ask your dad again?" Sam asked. "I did," Fred snapped. "Again. And he told me I'd have to learn my lesson one way or another. That he's done bailing me out." There was a pause. And then Fred's voice dropped into something darker, something Jules had never heard before. "If he won't give me the money, then maybe someone else will." "What the hell does that mean?" Sam's voice cracked. "The gang already asked about my family. I told them where my dad jogs every morning. And I mean, after he's gone, I'd get my share of the will, right? I could clear the debt and be done." Jules nearly dropped the basket. Her fingers trembled as the towels tumbled to the floor, her breath caught in her throat. Had she just heard what she thought she did? Fred, the boy she'd once nursed through a broken arm, the boy who used to fall asleep on her lap watching cartoons, planning his own father's death? A board creaked beneath her foot. Inside the study, the conversation stopped. "Did you hear that?" Sam whispered. "Sure." Jules didn't wait to hear more. Hard pounding, she gathered the towels and turned, retreating as silently as she could. But she knew it was too late. She had been heard. And worse, she now knew something that could cost her everything. Including her life. The silence was shattered. Crash. A loud crack echoed down the hallway as the antique vase, a priceless piece that had been in the Hedson family for generations, hit the marble floor and exploded into shards. Jules stood frozen for half a second, her wide eyes staring at the mess, the soft linen rag clutched in her trembling hand. Inside the room, chairs scraped against the wooden floor. "Someone's out there!" Fred shouted. "Go! Check!" Sam yelled. But Jules didn't wait. Instinct took over. She spun on her heel and ran. Her shoes slapped against the hallway tiles as panic surged through her veins like fire. The rag slipped from her grip, but she didn't turn back. Her heart beat like a war drum in her chest. "Jules!" Fred's voice rang behind her, louder now, closer. "Jules!" He had seen her. She didn't care. She flew down the back stairs, nearly tripping in her haste. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she didn't stop. Jules flung open the side exit, burst through the heavy oak doors, and launched herself into the vast estate grounds. The sun was still high, and the fields stretched wide, golden grass swaying in the wind like waves on a troubled sea. The Hedson mansion sat in the middle of hundreds of hectares of private land, far from the city, secluded and silent. But Jules had lived here long enough. She knew every tree, every fence, every trail worn by her own feet over the years. Behind her, she heard the pounding of footsteps, shouts growing fainter. But she didn't turn around. She bolted across the lawn, ducked under the stable gate, slid past the rusted old greenhouse, and sprinted into the wild overgrowth behind the estate's west orchard, a forgotten path known only to the old groundskeeper and herself. Twigs snapped under her feet. Thorns tore at her sleeves. But she kept going. The rag was still in her hand, soaked with sweat. She ran until her legs gave way and she collapsed, hidden by tall grass and trees. Her chest heaved. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. They would come looking for her. Fred had seen her face. He knew she'd heard. And now, she knew the terrible truth: someone was willing to kill their own father for money. For a moment, she thought of her son, still in school, waiting for her call. "I have to survive for him," she whispered, gripping the rag like it was her lifeline. From that day on, Jules would never be safe again. But she was smart. She was a mother. She was a survivor. Jules didn't go home. She couldn't. She had seen Fred's eyes, the flicker of panic, of calculation. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't confess. He would do anything to silence her. So she ran, not just from the mansion, but from everything she had ever known. By nightfall, her feet were blistered, her breath shallow, and her mind clouded with fear and desperation. Her clothes were torn from the brush, her once white apron now smeared with dirt and dried blood from a scratch on her arm. But she kept going, because she had one place left. A tiny apartment on the edge of town, in a neighborhood most of the Hedsons wouldn't even drive through. That's where Marisol lived. Marisol was fierce and warm and wild-spirited, a Mexican woman who had crossed the border years ago with nothing but a small backpack and a bigger dream. She had cleaned houses, flipped burgers, slept in shelters, until she carved out a quiet life for herself. Jules had met her when both worked a summer job cleaning lake cabins. From then on, they were sisters in spirit, bonded by struggle and survival. When Jules knocked on her door that night, the porch light flickering above her, Marisol didn't ask questions. She just pulled her inside and held her. Ay Dios mío. ¿Qué pasó, Jules? Her voice was thick with concern, arms wrapped tightly around Jules's shaking shoulders. I can't go back, Jules sobbed into her friend's neck. I heard something. Something terrible. I think Fred is trying to kill his father. And he saw me listening. Marisol's eyes widened. Mierda. She sat Jules down, brought water, a blanket, and warm tamales from the fridge. She lit a candle, closed all the windows, and checked the locks on the door 3 times. This wasn't the first time danger had brushed their lives, but this was different. This wasn't just poverty or immigration raids. This was murder. You stay here. As long as you need, Marisol said firmly, brushing Jules's hair away from her face. We'll figure something out. You're not alone, hermana. Jules nodded, tears spilling freely. I need to disappear, Mari. I need to leave the US, just like you came here. I need to go far, before they find me. Marisol didn't speak right away. She simply looked at her friend with a deep, maternal sadness, and nodded. Then we'll get you across, she said softly. The way I came. It won't be easy, but I know someone. And just like that, Jules's fate changed course again. She had run from death, and now she would run toward a new life. But the Hedsons weren't done with her yet. Not by a long shot. The night after Jules fled into Marisol's home, sleep did not come. Her body trembled even under the thick blanket, and every passing car outside made her heart lurch. She couldn't shake the image of Fred's face, not the boy she had helped raise, but the man twisted by desperation, eyes cold and calculating. She had to warn Mr. Hedson. He deserved to know. At dawn, she borrowed Marisol's old flip phone, one with no GPS, no connection to her past. Her fingers shook as she typed in the number from memory. She had dialed it countless times over the years, for grocery lists, for school pickups, for emergencies. But this time felt different. Like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. The phone rang. And rang. And then, click. Hello? The voice was calm, familiar, deeper than Fred's. It was him. Mr. Hedson, she whispered. It's Jules. Jules? There was surprise, even warmth, in his voice. Where have you been? Fred said you quit without warning, we were all worried. Her chest tightened. He didn't know. Not yet. I didn't quit. I ran, she said quickly. Sir, please listen to me. I overheard Fred. He owes a gambling gang a lot of money. He said they were going to kill him if he didn't pay. And then, he said something horrifying. He said, he gave them your morning route. That they'd get his share of your will if something happened to you. There was a long pause. So long, Jules thought maybe the line had gone dead. Then Mr. Hedson spoke, his voice low, careful. Jules, I appreciate everything you've done for my family. But, Fred is my son. I know, sir. I know you love him, Jules said, desperate now. But I heard him say it with my own ears. I wouldn't lie to you. Not about this. Another pause. Fred has made mistakes, he admitted, sighing. A lot of them. Gambling. Drinking. Skipping responsibilities. But he couldn't, hire someone to kill me. I didn't think so either, Jules whispered. Until I heard him say it. Mr. Hedson exhaled heavily on the other end. Where are you now? Somewhere safe. I had to run. He saw me. If he finds me. Don't say more, he cut in, voice suddenly firmer. If you're telling the truth, and I believe you are, then you're in danger. I'm going to take precautions. You believe me? Jules asked, her voice cracking. I want to believe you, Jules. But he's still my son. I have to see for myself. There was pain in his words, thick and tangled. Thank you for calling me. I'll handle it. And then, the line went dead. Mr. Hedson sat silently in his study, the early morning light creeping through the window. His coffee sat untouched, cooling by the minute. Fred, his only child. His late wife's legacy. Could he really? He thought back to all the late-night bailouts, the lies, the stolen cards. The cold stare Fred gave him last week when he refused to give him more money. He didn't know what to believe anymore. But one thing was certain, he wasn't going to ignore it. Within the hour, a discreet private security firm was called. A team of 3 men was hired. No uniforms. No visible weapons. They would follow him on his daily routines, golf, office, hikes, just far enough not to raise suspicion. Because even now, even with his life possibly on the line, Mr. Hedson wasn't ready to confront the full truth. Not yet. And that delay would cost him. Fred didn't come home that night. Or the night after. He had vanished. No text. No calls. No trace. But Mr. Hedson, sharp and seasoned from years in the business world, knew what it meant. Fred had figured it out. He must have known Jules had called, and that his father would no longer be an easy target. And so, the boy ran, not just from his father, but from the people he owed. The gang he thought he could manipulate. He knew the moment the plan failed, he would become their next target. Fred was good at running. He had done it his whole life. But this time, he wasn't just escaping a lecture or a cancelled credit card, he was running for his life. Back at the Hedson estate, silence returned like a fog. But danger had not passed. 4 days later, just as the air turned crisp and Mr. Hedson began his usual morning hike through the forest path behind his mansion, they came. 2 men in dark hoodies. Fast, deliberate, armed. They knew the route. They knew the time. They thought he'd be alone. But the security team was ready. They moved in from the shadows like wolves in reverse, emerging from behind trees, intercepting before a single bullet could fly. A short scuffle. One escaped. One was caught. But that was enough. The police were called. An investigation followed. The man arrested confessed quickly under pressure. And the pieces began to fall into place. The gambling ring. The threats. The plan to target a wealthy man through his desperate son. Fred's name came up more than once. But Fred was gone. And Jules? Jules had vanished too. Mr. Hedson sat by the fireplace that night, the light casting soft gold across his tired face. He held a photograph of the household staff from years ago, and there she was. Jules. Always in the background. Always steady. Always faithful. She had risked everything to warn him. He had doubted her. And she had disappeared without asking for anything in return. He had searched, hired investigators, asked Marisol, who stayed quiet, loyal to the end. But there was no trace. Just rumors. Whispers that she had crossed the border. That she was working in a field hospital in Guatemala. That she had changed her name. In the end, he accepted she might never come back. But that didn't stop him from doing what he knew was right. When he rewrote his will that winter, he included her name. To Jules Omorigi, faithful guardian, brave woman, and the only soul who truly tried to save my life, I leave a portion of my estate. Should she ever return, may she find a home, a future, and the peace she never asked for but so deeply deserved. And with that, a chapter quietly closed. But somewhere, beyond borders, beyond cities, beyond the reach of the Hedsons' wealth or shadows, Jules sat beneath a mango tree in the early morning light, her son beside her, smiling as he read a book. She didn't know about the will. Or the money. Or the trial. But she was safe. And sometimes, that was enough.